Hey guys, it's Jonathan McCormack over at attachmenthealinghelp.com, and mostly I do IFS, parts work, and something called Ideal Parent Figure Protocol. Today I'd like to try to make sense of love. I'll probably do this in a 4 or 5 part series, and much of what I'm going to speak about is taken from Sue Johnson. Sue Johnson is wonderful. There's two people, if you want to know all about love, and that's Sue Johnson from the attachment perspective and John Gottman from the Gottman Institute. He has a little bit of kind of a cognitive behavioral therapy standpoint, but he's still wonderful. And she wrote a book called Love Sense. The reason I'm bringing this up is because people don't know what to expect from a relationship. They ask me questions like, I don't know if I'm being needy. Or perhaps I'm putting too much pressure on them. What can I expect? Is marriage a myth? Can I get a guy who doesn't look at porn? Can I expect that? Can I get a gal who's going to stick by me? And Sue Johnson spent about 40 years deep in the research, and she came up with answers. At the end, I'll have a meditation that might be able to help you get in contact with your reactions to love, So, one of the interesting findings of Sue Johnson is that all the research, all of it, agreed that stable, loving relationships are, in fact, the absolute cornerstone of human happiness and well-being. Number one predictor, are you in a happy marriage? A good relationship is better than having health insurance, better than being on a diet, better than taking vitamins. In fact, there was recently a study just this year. Which would you think? Which would you rather have? You got cancer, chemo, and you're alone, or being married happily. You are actually more likely to survive cancer if you have a loving partner. I have no idea why it does that. No idea. But I'll give it a thumbs up. What the hell? Let's go crazy with it. Thank you. You're more likely to have a healthy end to cancer if you have a supportive partner. Instead of being alone with chemo, actually having medical treatment. Astonishing. Now, there's a lot of problems with this because marriage ain't what it used to be. It used to be, if you look at people in long-term marriages, they would often have about 5 good friends each. It helps take the pressure off. If you just have that one person, you're going to crush them with your needs, and they're not going to be able to do it. Since the mid-'80s, the amount of Americans who are married who only have their partner to confide in has risen about 50%. And I hear from many wives, their husbands rely on them for so much emotional support. And this is so much emotional work that they're exhausted. So looking for a guy, looking for a gal, one of the first questions I always ask, how many friends you got? Close friends. And if you don't have any, make some. The truth is, there's actually a loneliness research team. John Casipo, he's over at the University of Chicago. He did a bunch of studies. And the truth is, connection used to be what life was about. Connection. Instead of social connection, it's no longer a necessity. The way we structure society, it's merely incidental to our lives. They don't structure their lives, their jobs, where they live around connection. No, that's not what it's about. That's not the main thing. And there were a number of fairly provocative findings in Sue Johnson's work. The first was that, if I ask you, What's the main human instinct? The main one, the first one, sex. Aggression. It's comforting connection. That is the number one instinct of mankind. Your need depend on one precious other to know that when you call, they'll be there for us. That never dissolves. You will have that till you die. And as adults, you simply transfer that need from the parent to a lover. Key difference there. Your lover doesn't have to physically be there for you to feel that connection. Interesting. For a child, it does. You have to physically be there. But for an adult, you can just think, visualize, imagine the partner, and that actually can satisfy it. We can use mental images of our partner to call up a sense of connection. So, if you're upset, you remind yourself your partner loves you. You can imagine them reassuring you. And indeed, I do the Ideal Parent Figure Protocol. That's what it's based on. Okay, another finding. Hot sex leads to secure marriages and relationships, and that's completely false. If you are on a date, you first meet someone, and you just fall in love, run. That ain't going to work out. That's just your demons playing with theirs really well, triggering each other, attachment needs. Rather, secure attachment leads to hot sex. If you want that, you need emotional intimacy. You need to be vulnerable. And by the way, I talk to a lot of guys. Those one-night stands, those hookups, they're pathetic. They lead to nothing. I mean, they really are meaningless. And every guy knows that. Man, you get that girl who you open your heart to. I mean, that's good sex. That's what it's about. And in fact, sex gets better in marriage. Another finding, if you open up and you can increase intimacy. I'll just say internet porn, devastating, destroys love. It's a corrosive acid to relationships, truly. I hear so many women, well, every guy watches porn. No, that's not true. And you ought not to expect that from a man. The other thing that, frankly, perhaps I'm a bit cynical, I was surprised at, was monogamy is not only possible, monogamy is the natural state of humans. Now I get it. We're all different people. There's a small percentage that won't work for. Okay. But the pattern is very clear, and I was surprised how clear it is that was it. The other finding, people, be you, be your best self. The truth is, you can only truly be your best self when you're deeply connected to another human being. That secure bond is the launching pad for you going out into the unknown world, for exploring, to being open to new experiences. That is easy to do when your energy is bound up in a secure attachment. Otherwise, your energy will be bound up in worry, anxiety. But if you have any internal, deep inside, someone's there. Someone's there. That energy's free. We see so much depression, so much despair. Well, a million factors. Just one is not having that security. We live in this postmodern world, liquid modernity. Who knows what's going to be around? Who knows? Even our significant partner, will they? Yeah. So many bitter men, so many red pill men. Oh boy, you have to be 6'3". Yeah, and got those abs. Yeah, and you need to make 6.4% increase in your salary every year, or she will stab you. Oh yeah, a woman. Oh, it's just no. It's impossible to satisfy the woman. Yeah, no. Why do most women cheat? because they weren't being fulfilled emotionally, number one. Number two, revenge. It's not a pretty statistic, but oftentimes they feel they've been treated very poorly. And that's why they do it. Men cheat, well, just for the novelty, you know. But this idea that women are no longer faithful, they're no longer, you can't count on them, that's utterly false. That's not how they work. That's not how they work, you know. The truth is, being dependent upon another human being makes you more independent. We're so hyper-individualistic that everything's codependency. Well, guess what? A lot of things are. But having another person, relying on them, needing them, is not codependency. You ought to be a couple that supports each other to explore outward. So it's not all about attachment. It's also about independence. Your partner ought to make you more independent. Your partner ought to support your own independent things. Values, you have to have the same values. Ain't gonna work out otherwise. Interests, well, you can have different interests, you know. There's a lot of times you run into kind of protest behavior, and these protest behaviors can kind of erode the connection, you know. And there's plenty of demand. There's, you know, I mean, the bookshelves are filled with 12 steps to this, 12 steps to that, you know, 10 steps to a healthy marriage, this, that, the other thing. And frankly, they're very superficial. I do experiential work. It has to be an experience. You have to experience something. And indeed, attachment styles can change. One way they do change is when you have a secure partner. Don't get a partner, a secure friend. Don't go on them, get a therapist or a coach. And being with them can help your own insecurity by reprogramming the kind of internal working model. Here's the catch. It takes a couple of years. You ain't gonna go to therapy for 8 months and fix this, you know. Now, there's different styles in attachment. The truth is, we're bombarded that we're self-sufficient entities. You do you. You can do everything by yourself. Boy, I had this Russian boy from Serbia. Actually, he was from Serbia. And he used to have this saying, you know, the only thing a man can do is die. Because we need others. We need people. If you're an avoidant, oof, that sounds like a burden. That's the last thing you want. When you're securely attached, you realize it is a privilege and it is a beautiful thing to need another human being. You got all these messages, say here's how to soothe yourself, and you don't need anyone else, and hey, love yourself. Good luck with that. Yeah, how are you supposed to do that? Okay, I love me. What does that work? Forget about loving yourself. That ain't gonna work. You don't need to love yourself before getting into a relationship. Self-respect, if you want to call it self-compassion, that's very helpful, you know. But oftentimes, and this is a bit controversial, but I believe you need to be loved first before you can really love. I think we get it backwards. And this is all from John Bowlby. Now, Bowlby's theories have been updated, of course. He's the main guy with attachment theory. And he goes against this popular notion that love relationships are pretty much companions that you have sex with. Yeah, that's what they are. Yeah, companions. You know, kind of like your buddy, only, you know, if they're attractive enough to go to bed with. Yeah, that's what it is. No. Those are valuable friendships, but no matter how close your friend is, they can never offer the degree of caring, commitment, trust, and safety that true lovers do. Friends are never our irreplaceable others. There are exceptions, of course, you know. But That's true for children, that's true for adults. A secure, optimal style, if you want to call it that, that develops naturally. When you grow up knowing, and it's something you know experientially inside, you know that you can count on your caregiver to be accessible, they're around when you need them, and they're responsive. That loving contact is the cornerstone. It helps us calm ourselves and get into emotional balance. This idea of self-regulation, it's a bit of a crock. Of course you can self-regulate. Of course you don't need relationships. They're valuable, but you don't need it. Terrible word. I have my emotional needs. When the unconscious hears need, it hears necessary to survive. When it hears need, it's like, this is something I need, like air, like oxygen and food. You don't need that. But it's very valuable, And the truth is, you can learn to self-soothe and do all that, but there's still something about partner that is much deeper, much easier, much more visceral, A secure relationship, that's when you're comfortable with closeness. You're comfortable with needing another person. Like, yeah, of course I depend upon them. Of course I do. And avoiding that's terrifying, And someone who's anxious, they're anxious about that because they're not sure if they really can. They're not sure if they're really worth it, A secure relationship, you're not consumed with worry that you'll be betrayed or abandoned. Well, guess what? You can't get abandoned. You're an adult. No one that's 50 says, I just became an orphan. My parents just died. That can't happen. You're not going to starve to death. The ravens are going to come and carry you away. You'll be fine. You're an adult. It's sad. There'll be some mourning, but it's not necessary. You can't get abandoned. If it's that strong that it feels like an abandonment, that's a small child acting up, an inner child, a part, if you wish to use those words, Basically, if you're in a secure relationship, your behavior says something. It says, I know I need you, or I know you're valuable to me for emotional regulation, need, and I know you need me. I know I need you, and that's okay. In fact, it's great. So let's reach out to each other and get close. That's how all your behavior is. If you're dating, look at someone. What does their behavior say? Do they need you, or at least do they depend on you? Do they know you depend on them? Are they comfortable with it? Do they think this is a burden, or do they act like this is great? And so many things get in the way. And the things that get in the way we call attachment disorders. One of my favorite poets, Yehuda Amici, he has a poem called A Pity. We were such a good invention. It goes, they amputated your thighs off my hips. As far as I'm concerned, they're all surgeons, all of them. They dismantle us, each from the other. As far as I'm concerned, they're all engineers, all of them. A pity. We were such a good and loving invention. An aeroplane made from a man and wife, wings and everything, and we hovered a little above the earth. We even flew a little. Yeah, that's what it's about, that little last image. You are both together. One of the worst things you can do is get into a relationship to get wounds healed. Usually that doesn't happen. But also if you're just facing each other, that's nice. We have a million myths. Tristan and Isolde, the lovers go to the woods and they see each other, but at a certain point they got to come out of the woods and face the world, and they want to face it together. So you want to have something like a legacy, Both of us are really into environmentalism, and we kind of compost, and we do this and we do that. Both of us are into charity. Both of us are into this religion or that spirituality. Both of us have a mission that we both are part of. Oftentimes, well, that's family, you know. A man has certain needs. Inside needs to fight for something, needs to stand for something, needs to pass down knowledge, you know, needs to mentor. A father does all three, but you can find other ways to do it too, of course. So when you develop an insecure attachment, there's usually two kinds. Sometimes both in the same person. And that's called, the two kinds are basically anxious or avoidant, you know. I'll just go over those really quickly. And these things turn on automatically. They're unconscious. Before you even know it, boom. The nervous system just kind of comes up. If you have an anxious style, your emotions are ramped up. You worry about being abandoned. And so what do? You habitually seek closeness. Habitually. Latch on. And you ask for proof that you're loved. Now, I tell most men, a woman does, in fact, need to know she's loved, not told. Told too. Shown. It can be very simple. A little note. Every day, by the way, every day. Something simple, little text. One single rose. The way most men think, they go, listen, I bought her a car. I fixed the friggin' deck last year. I did it. Yeah, for a woman that counts as one thing. That's how a woman thinks. That's only one thing. The woman will act the exact same way if you bring her one rose. It's just one thing. Guys, somehow imagine like a bank, like these are coins that you put in, and like, well, what are you talking about? I gave you 3 months of love by fixing the car. You know, that should hold you over, huh? Right? Yeah, that don't work out. And those anxious people are saying something. The way they behave, they're saying, "Are you there? Are you? Show me. I can't be sure. I'm never sure. I don't even know if I'm worth it. I never know. Show me again. No, one more time. And again, and again, and again." Rather exhausting. If you have an avoidance style, well, you tamp down the emotions. You deactivate. You know, we call this dismissive avoidant, because you dismiss that. You have those needs, but you dismiss it. Why? Well, I don't know. Perhaps when you were a small child, you would reach out and no one would be there, or they wouldn't be responsive. And so guess what? That feels awful. So you just stop doing it. And you don't expect anyone to meet your needs. In fact, you evade connection. An avoidant sees other people as danger. You know, an avoidance attitude is, I don't need you, period. I don't need you. Pretty safe, right? You're in complete control. I don't need you. I'm Superman. You do what you do. If you want to leave, you don't love me, that's fine. I'm not going to get hurt, you know? But that is a terribly sad and lonely life. How do these, basically your attachment style line up exactly with how you see yourself. Whatever your self-image is, that's what you're going to live. Ask yourself, how do I see myself? Valuable, worthy of love, someone with a lot of things to offer. Or every time ask, like, you know, why don't you ask so-and-so out? To use the litany. I don't got the money. I'm too fat. I'm too tall. I'm too this. I'm too that. Is that where your mind goes right away? Come on, you know? And these are mental models. They shape the way you regulate your emotions. They guide your expectations in love. They assign meaning. How you see yourself is how you'll interpret the other person. If you think you're unworthy of love, no matter what they do, you'll interpret it that way. And even if you rationally interpret it that, clearly they do love me, it won't feel like they do. This is visceral. This is emotional. It's the nervous system. Secure people, they see themselves as generally competent. They're not worried like, in a couple of years, if this happens, that happens, I'll get by. They see themselves as worthy of love. Of course, why wouldn't I be? And they see other people as trustworthy and reliable. They see other people that they know this person can reasonably be expected to show up for me. Anxious people usually idealize others. They kind of have the opposite. Others are wonderful and great and little tin gods, and me, I'm not so much. They very doubt their own value. And also, they're not sure they're acceptable. Is this acceptable? They don't know. Well, if you think like that, that's your self-image. What are you going to do? You're going to obsessively seek out approval and reassurance that you are indeed lovable. That's not enough. You also have to know you're not about to be rejected. And anxious people are very sensitive. So if you have a partner who's a little anxious, I'll just say, for instance, I know a lot of men are very anxious and they want to connect physically, intimacy, they want sex, and the wife's not for it. That's fine. But how do you say that? Because a lot of women will be like, no, oh God, no. And then the man just wilts like a flower. Well, instead you can say, you're a great lover, and I love the way we're together. But right now, X, Y, and Z. If they're anxious, like, you thought, your girlfriend thought you were going to be there for her this weekend and something came up, you just like, yeah, I know we're supposed to, but yeah, sorry, I'm there. Ooh, the rejection. You feel, oh Lord, am I not that important? No. You frame it this the same way. I love getting together with you, and I love our time together. But right now, and it's not you, it's me, I have to take care of X, Y, and Z. That I'm taking responsibility. And you're assuring them that this is not a rejection. Nevertheless, if you are very anxious, you'll still feel it's a rejection no matter what, until you take care of that security problem. Avoidance, again, are a bit of the opposite. They see themselves as worthy of love. Of course, someone's going to love me. Me? I'm pretty great. Of course, A lot of times people see avoidance as narcissistic. They are not. Or cold. Or arrogant. That's all defense. That's not real narcissism. That's their conscious stance. That's the little mask that goes on. Any self-doubt, and believe me, avoidance have it even more than an anxious person. So much more that they cannot even allow the other person to know that they have needs and wants and desires. They have this intrinsic negative view of people and others, that others are inherently unreliable, inherently untrustworthy. When they go up to someone, they expect this person's not going to be real and true and authentic. That's their expectation before they even meet the person. That's their frame, their internal working model. Kind of hard to get to know someone. Kind of hard, even harder to allow them to get to know you. And, the anxious avoidant dance, these two are constantly together. It's the number one dysfunctional relationship, of course. Anxious people attach and reach for those that they love and comfort. Avoidant people withdraw. In general. But there's a twist. Anxious people do not reach out to others when the threat comes outside of the relationship. So if the threat comes outside, they lose their job, this happens, that happens, some threat that threatens their security, they don't reach out. Anxious people don't. If it's a threat from their partner, they do. They do. Please, please, reassure me. But if it's a threat from outside their relationship, they don't reach out. They just go off the rails. I mean, they catastrophize. I'm like, okay, you lost your job. No. You try and talk to them. Well, tell me, what do you think's going to happen? All of a sudden, irrelevant details will come in. They'll give this big whining story. You'll have no idea what they're really afraid of. Probably they don't either. They become angry, anxious people. If it's the partner, they're very submissive and very, of course, I care about you, all about you. But when it's an external threat, they become very confrontational, very angry. All of a sudden, they'll come home and their partner's not doing enough and their partner's this and that and that. What happened? I don't know. Maybe their boss yelled at them. Maybe they felt their job was in jeopardy. Completely different reaction. And yet, if the threat's from their own partner, all of a sudden, they fawn. Very interesting. And generally, anxious people are kind of uneasy about their lover's commitment, just to begin with. And they're primed to view anything negatively. They're haunted by the specter of abandonment. So what do? Control. They try to control their lover. Anxious people are the hovering types, and they kind of control every little aspect of their lives. Well, boy, if your lover's avoidant, they're going to really withdraw, and then you're going to feel even more anxious, Anxious people become frantic when they sense that. They try to pull their partner back, oftentimes even making threats. That happens all the time, like, well, no, I need to do this, I need to do that, or maybe, you're kind of moving away a little bit. Oof, they become obsessed, angry, more and more hostile. Destroy property, there's an anxious person. The key, the car, slashing tires, this, that, the other thing. That's an anxious person. They also have more feeling of longing and a lot more sexual desire for the partner. The more the partner moves away, the more they get sexually dysregulated, let's call it. I don't know what to call it. It's almost like a fishing hook. When you go fishing, maybe you guys aren't fishing, I do. I dig fishing, you go fishing, and then when you see fish coming, you reel it in a little bit. And as it's pulling away, the fish goes quicker for it. Same with an anxious partner. The more you pull away, the more that hunger comes up, the more sexual desire. And you'll notice this, like guys or girls, wherever. When you go to, a vacation, like, I got to take 3 days for a business trip, or 3 days going with my buddy's trip, or whatever you're doing, hiking, going for a boating trip. Whoa, the day you leave, she's a tiger. She goes crazy. What got into her? You're moving away. It's rejection sensitivity, is what they call it. They expect your dismissal. They expect their partner is going to dismiss them. And so, of course, they start acting with increased aggression. Perceived rejection triggers violence in men and women. There's this really silly meme that the alpha man is the man who all the women want, and he's the violent guy, the bad boy. There's reasons for that. And No, not at all. The most unattractive thing on the planet is when a guy loses his cool and starts flipping out. That's the most unattractive. Real strength, knowing you could take care of things, but you don't. You're very calm. You don't let things rattle you. That's very stable. That's attractive. The guy who's always getting into fights, always flipping out, that man is very insecure, a woman, whatever. And then it's not attractive. That's not the alpha dude. That's not the alpha. The alpha dude is the guy who's in control. Any perceived rejection will trigger that kind of violent attitude. So it's something to be wary of. Avoidance, they rely on themselves. When there's perceived rejection or things aren't going well, think about it. If I asked you right now, whoever's watching this, what do you do when you feel dysregulated? What do you reach for? First thing you reach for. For some people, it's if you're religious, it's God. For some people, it's the phone. Some people, it's the internet. Some people, it's this. Some people, it's their partner. Wow. Or a friend. But seriously, last time you were like, oh boy, so you're just not feeling well. What was the first thing you popped in your mind? What was the first thing you reached out for? An avoidant will self-soothe. Sometimes with alcohol and drugs. Sometimes just isolation. Sometimes video games, watching TV, whatever. But it doesn't rely on other people. No. And of course, that leads to a lot of drug addiction. Yeah, instead of reaching out for a person, you reach out for a bottle. A lot easier. Bottle don't reject me. Bottle never do that. Bottle's not going to leave me. Okay. All those things you're looking for in the bottle: security, delight, some joy, relaxation, emotional regulation. Or you're looking for a human. Perhaps Jung would say, on a low level, you're looking for God. Oh, okay, sure. Spirituality, something. Yeah, of course. In the medieval times, we would call alcohol spirits. Spirits and liquors, spirits. Because we were looking for something spiritual, whether in a human being or some transcendent source. Now, avoidance, they don't talk to friends about their problems. They simply distract themselves. They tend to steer clear of new relationships once they get out of one. They get out of a relationship. Well, they're going to not be in another one for another year, 2 year, 3 year, 5 year. Because they don't need anyone, Anxious person, when they break up, they will hop right into a new relationship. Absolutely. As I say, there's a category where both attachment systems are at the same time. Sometimes people call that disorganized. Sometimes people call that fearful, avoidant, And oftentimes with those people, they'll actually have one attachment system for one sex, the other for the other. So with men, they're very avoidant, but with women, they're very anxious, or vice versa. Often, not always. And how that happened? Well, that would happen if you had, say, one parent that was very needy and overwhelming, and you would just have to close it off just to survive. And you had another parent that was very avoidant and was never there, and you really had to go crazy to get their attention. So you had to have two different attachment strategies, and they both kind of incarnate. Now, as far as relationships go, well, relationships with avoidance usually don't take, because there's just not enough fire, not enough arrows there. Neither is really going to be invested. Both partners are usually pretty determined to reject emotional involvement. Two anxious people also usually do not work out well. They're too absorbed by their own worries to even really see the other person. They don't see the other person. They just see their own worries, really. And this is important to know. When your partner is anxious and upset, you might think they're reacting to me, what I said, what I did. Perhaps. And I bet you a little bit of that emotional reaction is, in fact, about you. Most of it is not. Most of it, they're reacting to some story in their head. Most of it is a small wounded child. Most of it is something reacting to something that happened years ago. Those, our emotions often do not come from situations. They come from how the mind interprets those situations. And oftentimes they come from the unconscious. So it's a little like someone has a radio, and then they have a song, they want to change the song, so they're shaking the radio, yelling at the radio. This song is not in the radio. It's coming from somewhere else. That emotion is coming from something that happened 10 years ago, 15 years ago, and has very little to do with the person in front of you. Well, if you understand this, you will be more sympathetic to your partner. And if they understand this, they'll be able to make sense of it too. Like I said, most common, anxious avoidant. Forget it. As I said, attachment styles do tend to be stable. but they're not immutable. As I say, if you get a secure partner, that can often very much help. It takes a couple of years. There are things you can do like the Ideal Parent Figure Protocol, or parts work. And I know people, you hear this a lot, like, oh, you can change these things in 3 to 6 months. No, you can't do that. That won't work. Yeah, I've read the studies. I'm very well aware of the studies. There's like 2 or 3. They have like 16 people. They don't use the AAI to test. Instead, they use like the AIG, or, like 10 questions. Oh, he's secure. He answered these 10 questions, right? Come on, give me a break. And I got to tell you, I've been in David Elliott's supervision group. The guy came up with Ideal Parent Figure Protocol, him and Dan Brown. And he is always very careful the way he speaks of it. He's like, this is promising. These studies point to a promising possibility. But likely if you get in contact with me or someone else and they know what they're talking about, it takes a couple of years. Takes a good year, 2 years. Honestly, to get fully, if you really want to get fully secure, you're talking about, I'm afraid to say this, but truly, you're talking about 3 to 5 years. That doesn't mean you can't get into a relationship. No. After a year and a half of good therapy, you ought to be stable enough, truly, to start getting into it. Absolutely. But don't listen to those people who kind of have that, hey, get with me, got this 12 steps to security. I would love to advertise it. Boy, I would have a lot of clients if I did that. And right now I have too many. I have a waiting list. I'm fine. I don't need clients. So I'd like to do a little meditation. And this meditation is, I'll just ask, we'll get comfortable, we'll do a body scan, and I'll just ask a couple questions. And what would be great is if you just got into the body, paid attention to the body, paid attention to what comes up in the body when I ask these questions. Do you get that feeling in the stomach? Then the emotions, when I ask these questions, what do you feel? What are the emotions? And then, what are the thoughts? What are the first thoughts that pop into your head? I'll do the body scan really quickly. If you guys did the body scan every single day for 15 minutes, in 4 months, you'd notice real change. Just the body scan. Why? The truth is, we all have a basic belief, a schema, and that's unconscious. You probably don't know what it is. And it doesn't matter if you do. That don't help, knowing these things. Anyway, when that gets triggered, the body reacts first. Sensations. Then, heart beating. Then the mind gives you emotions. Ooh, there's a threat. I better give you anxiety to run away or whatever, anger. Then come the thoughts. When you talk to people with attached problems, they know their thoughts. Emotions are low. Bodily sensations, they have no idea. And I gotta tell you, we're so disincarnate today. So I'll start with the body scan. And then we'll get into it. Okay. It's only going to be about 10 minutes, but I would just invite you to and you can just listen to me if you like, just listen to me. But if you'd like to actually do a meditation, a guided meditation, I would invite you to just start settling in, settling down into the body. You can close your eyes, leave them half open, whatever's comfortable. And I would invite you to get into the meditative posture, and that's with your shoulders back and down, pushing the crown of your head up towards the ceiling, chin tucked in, and feet firmly planted on the ground. And I'm going to start with 3 deep breaths. This calms the polyvagal system. So I'd invite you to join me. Take a super deep breath. Hold it below the belly. And then slowly release. Great. Now another super deep breath. holding below the belly, and release. Great. Last one. Super. Deep breath. Holding below the belly. And release. Great. Great. And I'd invite you to do a quick body scan. And I'd invite you to focus all the awareness right on the forehead. And just notice the forehead. And you can smooth out the forehead. Moving down to the eyes. And you can soften the eyes. Soften all the muscles around the eyes. Down to the cheeks. Softening the cheeks. Moving awareness into the jaw. And just allowing the jaw to be a little slack and loose. And then a wave of warm, loving awareness moving down the neck, into the shoulders, moving down the torso, down, all the way down. Loosen the belly, loosen the hips, moving into the legs, down into the calves, all the way down to the feet. And you can even press the soles of your feet against the ground to notice how it feels when your feet are planted firmly like roots of a tree. Great. Now that we're a little more relaxed, I would invite you to imagine that you're in an unfamiliar, dark place. And suddenly you're unsure and scared and aware that you are very much alone. And you feel an impulse. You want to call out for someone to come. Feel into this. You're all alone. You're in this place. It's dark. Imagine it. Notice that impulse. Notice that impulse to call someone. Who is the person you want to respond to you? It could be a partner. It could be a past partner, a parent, a religious figure. Or is there anyone? Who pops into your mind when you're feeling all alone? Now, when you have a figure, imagine his or her face in your mind's eye and notice how they're looking at you, how they're being, and just notice. Notice that feeling you want to call out and someone comes to mind. Lean into this. Lean into this. Now, do you call? Do you call out to them? Or not? What feels right to you? What feels just right? To call? Or are you afraid? what comes up for you. Notice the thoughts, the feelings right now. Perhaps you convince yourself that this was a bad idea. Perhaps you're feeling, this is a sign of weakness. This is almost embarrassing that I would need to call out for someone. Perhaps you feel there's just going to be disappointment here. Just hurt. Perhaps you feel it's not good to rely on another person. You got to take care of this yourself. And perhaps you just hunker down in the dark. I would invite you to go out and call out to that person right now. Imagine you see them in your eye. Who can I go? Go ahead and imagine calling out to that person. And really act it out. Do that right now. I'd invite you. How do you do it? Perhaps you call, but very hesitantly. Really imagine yourself doing it. Would you call out confidently? Would you call out hesitantly? What do you do after you call? Do you call out, then go hide? Do you call out, then just crumple down? Really picture yourself. Imagine what your voice sounds like. Is it quiet, desperate, anxious that they'll come? Feel into the body. And now imagine they come. When someone comes, what do? Go ahead. I'll give you a moment. Just imagine what they do. What does your mind come up with? What do they do? Really imagine it. What happens? Do they express concern? Do they offer comfort? Reassurance? Do they put a warm hand on your shoulder? Do they stay with you? And what happened when they came? What happened to your body? Did you see them and you got this sense of relief? Start to relax. Now I can just let myself be. Now I can allow myself to be comforted. Were you able to feel that comfort? Or do they come, but sometimes turn away, dismiss you? What's the problem? You're alone? So what? You're calling me for this. Do they tell you to just get your emotions in check? Okay? Get a hold of yourself. And if they do, what is that like for you? Do they criticize you? What, really? Really? You can't take care of this yourself? And when you tell them, does it sound like they hear you? That they get it? Do they really hear you? Your body will let you know. Your body doesn't lie. It will let you know if you feel this person can be relied upon. Checking on your body now. They come, you call, they come. What happens in the body? Does it relax? Does it relax in a certain part? Really scan your body right now and see what comes up. The sensations in the body. Is there a place that's tight? Numb. Some people like to say, hey, check the chest. Check the belly. Do you feel anything? Is there sore, agitation, calm, relaxed? How difficult is you to do this? How difficult was it for you to call them? How difficult is for you to feel comfort when they do come? What emotions come up now? The sensations. Now what are you feeling? Sadness. You don't have to analyze it. Why? Forget. Check in. Joy, anger, even anxiety. Check in. That merely man, that person shows up. What's your reaction emotionally? What are your thoughts? Right now, what's going through your head? Perhaps even what beliefs about yourself. I can't count on them. I'm not really worth it. I don't know if they'd really show up if I called. Or, I don't even really need them, and they're here, but what for? What are they doing here? What are your thoughts? Check in on your mind right now. What does their reaction say about you? Oh, they showed up, and that says I am meaningful, I'm worthy, they're there, of course. Or, yeah, they show up, but I can tell it just feels weird. It feels like they don't want to be there. I don't know. I don't know how you'll feel or think. Now, let that scene fade, but stay in the meditation. And now imagine floating up, a little meta perspective. What did you learn? What did this imagined scenario tell you about what you expect in a relationship? What did you learn? Think about what comes up. Our expectations, our predictions about how others will respond to us, how others will guide us. Those predictions, they guide our steps in any dance with a lover. The reactions you just had, that's your love story right there. Whatever you experienced, probably that's how it's going to be. Either when you get into your next relationship, or it's going to be in the relationship you're in now. That is your love story. Those reactions, those thoughts, you just wrote it. You don't have to come see me or anyone. That's what's going to happen probably. That story you just wrote up, those emotions, you'll probably live them. Now, staying in the meditation, see if you can articulate your general feelings about love, about relationships. I'll ask you, what, in one sentence, what phrase or sentence just pops up in your mind? Stay in the meditation. What are your feelings about love and relationships? What first pops up for you? Go. What came up? I remember one time I did this with someone, and before I even finished the sentence, she came out, they just don't work. And then she was like, oh my Lord, that's really what I think? That's yeah. That's your story. And now next time you get into a relationship, that's the story you'll live. Great thing is, you can change these things. Now I'll count down 5 to 1. When I reach 1, you'll be back in the room, present in the body. You can start coming back to the body. And 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Back in the room, safe, present in today, now. I appreciate you guys checking on these videos. And if you have any suggestions, please let me know. This is just the first part. I'll have a bunch more. And if you want to find me, attachmenthealinghelp.com. Thanks, guys.